The information provided in this podcast is for general knowledge and informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional for diagnosis and treatment of any medical condition. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Unplugged Healthcast or Dr. Wall.
A big thing that's out there today is a carnivore diet. You know, that followed a thing that was called the Atkins diet. That went to the Zone diet. And now it's transitioned over the last 25 years into the carnivore diet. All of them I'm a fan of, honestly. But I really think the center of these diets is that they have no gluten in them.
Neck pain, backaches, headaches, fatigue. The list goes on, and you're likely on it. Tired of the broken system and big pharma? We offer logical solutions, teach you to think critically, and empower you to reclaim your health. Welcome to the Unplugged Healthcast with Dr. Kevin Wall.
Hey, welcome back to the Unplugged Healthcast. This is Dr. Wall, your host. One of my favorite things growing up as I was young was going to Grandma's house and the smell of baking bread. Man, nothing better. And every so often, though, Grandma would up her game and she would bake kolaches. Man, I don't know if you've ever had a kolach, but it's just an amazing little pastry made with the bread, but dolloped in the middle with some of your favorite sweet treats, cherry, peach. So this week I did the research. I took one for the team. I went out and researched. I had to find out, do people still make these things? And if they do, are they as good as Grandma made? Well, the good news is I found, if you see the pictures here, I'm showing you the Kolach Cafe. If you haven't been there, you need to consider checking it out. Everybody, at least one time in their life, needs to try a kolach. As far as your eye could behold, there were kolaches everywhere. The smell was just like Grandma's, so I bellied up to the bar and I ordered myself a cherry kolach, just like Grandma made. As I'm checking out, getting ready to dig in, I asked the question that often everybody is asking today. You've either said it or you've heard it. Do you have gluten-free kolaches? Well, she looked at me and chuckled and said with a grin, well, honestly, our kolaches have extra gluten in them. What is up with the gluten? Why does everything that tastes so good have gluten in it? Goodness, this is frustrating. Today, we're going to unplug you from the gluten confusion, the wheat grains, the oat grains, the barley grains, all the grains today that we're dealing with, they're not the same grains as our ancestors had. In fact, I think they've changed even over the last 35 years. If you've ever seen or heard, if you go to Europe and you eat the bread over there or have grains in that area, they seem to be different. You feel different. They taste different. A friend of mine I met a couple, 3 years ago at a men's retreat was a large-scale farmer up in Idaho. He farmed over 100,000 acres. This guy was in charge of and overseeing a ton of grain farming. One day, years ago, when I posted one of my non-GMO posts, and I found out very quickly that maybe he didn't like me as much as I thought he did. He got very offended as I talked about the farming industry and how they're kind of really creating so many problems. Well, God bless him. You know, his heart is in the great place, an awesome Christian guy, but his question was really kind of a quandary. He says, how is it we're supposed to, with the weight of our world, feed the masses? The genetic modification process has been put on and the pressure has been put on the farmers. I have to tip my hat to them. I know what they're up against and why this maybe has occurred. But today we are dealing with different grains. I don't think any of us are growing wheat in our backyard, and I doubt most of us are going to be willing to spend the money that it costs to buy some of these other grains. So I just think we have to come to the realization we're living with gluten. It's going to be around. It's not going away easily. So we may figure out how we're going to survive it or how to actually thrive around it or within it. So I have brought on, as I do, experts for us to figure this thing out. If you would, welcome into the show Michelle Bock. She is the founder, creator of Goodness Gracious Gluten-free. If you're dealing with celiac disease, gluten intolerance, gluten sensitivity, you're going to find solutions and answers. And Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And I know you know a lot more about gluten than I do, but why don't you tell us a little bit of what, maybe how you started or why you started this platform and what it does, and maybe a little bit of your history, because I don't think this is something you do. It's something you are. It's who you are, right?
Yes, it very much is part of my life. I found out 18 years ago that I could no longer tolerate gluten. And thankfully, we're in healthcare, so we figured it out really quick that I had celiac disease. The average person waits 5 years to get diagnosed, and I was super thankful we figured it out quickly so I could start to heal and move on with my life, which also prompted us to start Goodness Gracious Gluten-free so that we could help teach people, how to cook gluten-free, change your grandma's recipes into things that tasted delicious.
So you're telling me I can have a kolache possibly?
Well, I've never had one, so I could probably figure it out for you.
All right.
But I did recreate my grandma's vina tarta, which is an Icelandic pastry layered with prunes.
Seems similar.
We could probably figure out a collage.
Can we skip the prunes though, maybe?
Yes, for sure.
That'd be great.
Cherry would be better. So started Goodness Gracious Gluten-free. I do online classes. I have helped people with shopping, cleaning out their pantries, where to start, and then how to go about everything else. And then last year I started a travel company as well, because traveling the world gluten-free is difficult, requires a lot of planning, and I can help you do all those things.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I know you're helping a lot of people. I've seen some of the information myself. I'm a follower, so I get to watch some of the things you're doing, and I know it's life-changing for people who have gluten issues. But I also know when you talk about it that it involves not more just you, it really involves your family. So we brought in maybe a side expert, but also the co-founder of AFC Physical Medicine, my partner for many, many years, 20 years, I think we've been running health clinics together. And Michelle's husband, Dr. Josh Bock. Introduce yourself, Doc. Hey, welcome to the show you've been sponsoring for like the last 6 months.
Love it. You bet. And thanks for the opportunity to, help create more awareness about gluten intolerance and sensitivities. I tell you, she's had a long history of 18 years, like she said. And frankly, it's so much easier today to enter a restaurant, speak to a server, talk about it with friends than it was 15, 18 years ago. Like years ago, it was like, I don't even know what that is. You said the G word. I'm going to have to go figure that out. But today, you can have a conversation and it's actually people can understand or figure it out and help you create a safe experience. So, we've had a gluten-free home all these years. The kids were raised. We have 2 daughters. They were raised gluten-free, and it's made a substantial difference in our lives. We feel better when we eat that way, and there's lots of creative ways that Michelle's helped our family, survive without gluten.
How does it really apply to the average person? We know it's only 1 out of 100 people deal with celiac disease, right? But probably 9 out of 10 or 9 out of 100 up to 10 out of 100 people deal with gluten intolerance, gluten sensitivity, gluten issues. Even if I go and eat a pizza today, if it's a gluten-laden pizza, I feel heavy. I think most people these days notice gluten, and they notice when they're not dealing with gluten. And I'll bet if you're listening to this, a lot of you don't think you have gluten issues. By the end of our show, I think you may find answers that'll apply to you and things that'll make you be healthier and enjoy your food, enjoy your general activities. Because when you're dealing with gluten sensitivity, often it's symptomatic in ways you're not aware of. In fact, let's take a moment. We're going to watch a very kind of viral video here on this exact topic, and then we're going to kind of start a conversation that applies to all these things.
You can't fix a nutrient deficiency disease with a drug. You can manage it, which is better than suffering from the disease, I guess. The more whole grains you eat, the harder it is for your body to absorb the nutrients that your stomach just digested. So not only are the foods minerally deficient because the soils are minerally deficient, but your body's ability to absorb what little nutrition there is in the food is extremely compromised because you listened to General Mills, Procter & Gamble, Monsanto, and the people that make the food. It's a bad idea to let the people who make the food give you advice about what food to eat. 4 of the most dangerous foods on planet Earth: wheat, barley, rye, and oats. My recommendation for everybody 100% across the board: stop eating these foods completely for 4 weeks in a row. 4 weeks. 4 weeks in a row. 28 days. Then on day 29, eat a lot of gluten. Have pancakes for breakfast, have a sandwich for lunch, have cookies and crackers, have pasta for dinner, and see how you feel. And as God is my witness, if you make it to lunch without something bad happening, I'll eat my hat.
Well, eating his hat may be better than eating the gluten from that day. Well, what are your thoughts on just the concept? Boy, it used to be those 4 grains are what you learned in the pyramid of school of like what you're supposed to eat. And here this guy saying that eating the 4 grains are actually causing malnutrition and the opposite.
So I grew up around farming, just like you talked about from your guy from Iowa, but personally, I can't tolerate it. So we're big fans of the paleo diet and the Whole30 approach to eating, where you really just do fruits, veggies, meat, and cheese and keep it simple.
So is that like the 28 days he's talking about? If someone who just wants to really test this out if they're gluten tolerant, just do something like that, because they think I got to stop eating everything that I love, and that's not really true, right?
Right. There's so many great things out there that you can eat on a Whole30 kind of diet. But that's how we really started to discover that I had celiac disease, was I did an elimination diet. Same thing, 30 days of not eating anything. And when I added it back in, that's when everything went really horrible, really quick.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Bock, I know you have talked at times when you went to Europe. I don't really travel Europe much. I didn't really say I could tell the difference, but you definitely did. Eating the grains, the breads, some of the stuff over there, you were able to do it. What's so different over there that is it just the way the farmers are making this, or it's the way they're cooking it?
No, I definitely think it's where they source their materials from, because, they're making a pizza out of dough and the sauce and the ingredients or whatever, and wherever they're getting and making their dough and sourcing their ingredients from, it's just different than it is here. We've done it a couple times. We go there, feel great, come home, don't feel so great. And honestly, there's even a lot of gluten-free foods that are not great. They're, made with other chemicals,
Highly processed.
Very highly processed foods, and they're not even great. So if I was to have a sandwich with gluten-free bread, it's really not the best thing for you either, compared to other nutritious foods that are readily available.
So it's maybe not just the grains. It sounds like it's the process of what is the result making the food from the grains.
Right.
Have you ever seen or heard, because I have seen and definitely tasted the difference, that today as people make bread or bread-like products, it's a fast thing. It's a 2-hour scenario. Get the wheat, get the barley, get the flour, and you're in it, and you're baking it, and it's 2 hours later, you're eating it. Whereas back in the day, they would actually put the yeast with the actual grain. They would leave it for a day or two. The process of fermentation and growth of the yeast actually creates an enzyme that helps you break down gluten. Have you seen that or know that to be true?
I've never really experimented it with, because even going to Europe as a celiac, you can't still eat the grain there. So I don't have a lot of experience in it, but I used to make my own sourdough. And even with gluten-free sourdough, that still ferments on your counter. And that was a lot better than I think the overly processed gluten-free bread that we can get too.
Well, one of my thoughts as we kind of, if we're getting tips for you listeners, is that if you're eating bread and you really have to have bread, you can find places where people let their bread rise for 2 days or 2 days before they bake it. You'll find that actually tastes and feels different. I personally have noticed that myself, and I've seen some of the science. Can people order food from Europe over here? Is it even something worthy of doing, or is that just too pricey?
No, it's a great resource. She's found several which are listed on your website, but famous chefs in America like Giada has her own gluten-free line of all the pastas.
Even the fun shapes.
Oh, it's delicious. She does a great job. You put them side by side with a gluten-filled penne, And I promise you, you're not going to know the difference.
Okay, well, right there, let's don't miss that one. So people can get these sources going right to your website. We'll say that. What's your website again?
It's www.gggf.com or goodnessgraciousglutenfree.com.
So gggf.com, and they can find these products and order them right through your website.
I have a link to them.
Link to them. All right. Well, there you go. If you've had an experience in Europe and you want to recreate that at home, here's a chance right now to do that.
After an injury, it can feel like life's on hold. But at AFC, we're here to help you get back to what matters. With personalized injury plans and our expert staff, we don't just treat the pain, we guide you back to strength and confidence. Because getting back isn't just about healing, it's about thriving. Call us or visit our website to start your journey today.
Can we just back up and just explain some simple things like what is gluten and why is everybody talking about it, and why is gluten-free now just a phrase everyone seems to be aware of and are speaking?
So gluten is a protein found in grains such as wheat, barley, and rye. And oats are dangerous because of the way they are farmed, because of when they're harvested to the same equipment. Oats don't have gluten in them, but they are farmed on the same equipment. So it's really easy for the cross contact and little hidden pieces of wheat to get stuck in with your oats.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I've heard that you should be able to eat oats if you're gluten-free, but I noticed my wife having oatmeal and having a similar reaction she gets when she eats wheat.
So I buy Purity Protocol farmed oats if I'm going to have them, and they're tested on site. They have less than 5 parts per million gluten chances in them, which is lower than the standard of everything in America gluten-free.
I know you have celiac disease by definition, but there are a lot of people who don't have that but have gluten intolerance, which is another diagnosis. And then there's just down to gluten sensitivity. Maybe explain the difference between the three.
Sure. So celiac disease, it's an autoimmune condition. So literally it's your body attacking itself when you eat gluten. The way to diagnose it is usually you start with blood tests and then you end up with an endoscopy. For gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance, it can just be through like the blood tests, like through allergy testing. Is it the IgG?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, we do that in the clinics, I know.
And you can find out that way. And a lot of people really find out about their sensitivities by doing, once again, elimination diet. When you got it back in, you don't feel good, so then you just don't want to eat it.
So if you're thinking you're sensitive, the best thing to do is just go gluten-free or avoid it, or that 30-day not a fast. What's it called?
Elimination.
Whole 30.
Okay.
But if you have celiac disease, when you get your testing done, you have to be eating gluten to have it done.
Well, what would be the symptoms? Maybe give the symptoms of the three, because I think that it would look different if you had one or the other or the worst. What would a patient know to even consider they have one of these problems?
Sure. So there's over 300 symptoms of celiac disease, which makes it really confusing.
Oh, goodness.
There's anything from rashes on your skin to diarrhea, vomiting, swelling, nausea, brain fog. It's just, there's so many that, I don't know how you would distinguish them from one to the other, other than severity. So
severity. So it's just, you think that celiac is just gluten intolerance unleft corrected and it turns in to that? Is that what typically happens, or it's at least the theory?
I don't know. Yeah, it can turn out, and I was in my 30s when I got diagnosed, not a child.
Okay. What about, a lot of people just get bloating, they notice that, or they just feel, gas, intestinal issues, indigestion, and they think it's gluten issues. Is it? How do they know? Is there a way to test, or is it the blood work, we go back, or the allergy testing again?
I think you would go back to the allergy testing for sure.
And for instance, like here at AFC, we test a lot of patients, and anything that you're either exposed to via food or environmental is going to create an inflammatory reaction. My mom has Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid condition, so that when she eats gluten, it attacks her thyroid. So she'll have thyroid-based symptomatology like fatigue and just, sometimes depression, or it doesn't feel right. So there's a variety of different symptoms, like Michelle said, over 300. So if you're feeling fatigue, you're feeling like, man, I just don't feel myself. You got the brain fog, can't formulate sentences correctly. It doesn't have to necessarily be GI symptoms. We're treating people with neck pain or back pain or inflammatory, like a tendinitis, and that chronic inflammatory process in a muscle tendon isn't healing all the way. And sometimes it comes down to the foods that you're eating or the environment that you're surrounding yourself in. And so, it's important to get tested and get checked out, and don't leave symptoms just unmanaged and wait for them to become a lot more significant. There is a pathway to find this stuff out.
I was chatting online, which I do at times with some of the listeners, and there was a little, I wouldn't say a hot conversation, but a gal who had fibromyalgia, and just bound to determine this was a genetic disease. And I think it's not. I think it's relative to your gut. And I just wonder how many fibromyalgia type of patients have an origin of a gluten issue left undiagnosed, left untreated, because the way it presents is very similar symptoms that I think I remember you having when you were in kind of full-blown really dealing with it.
I get a lot of joint pain, back pain, all that stuff.
I feel bad for folks that have fibromyalgia as a diagnosis. It's a very simple diagnosis that they came up with in the 90s, that if you have 9 or more trigger points, you qualify for fibromyalgia. And, having tension or spasm or knots in your muscle tissue, it's not that hard to find 9 of them. And gosh, what if it was as simple as you were ingesting something that was creating extra inflammation in your body?
Well, one of our themes of our podcast is health is simpler than you think it is. I doubt that you have 9 different health problems. Chances are you have one, and often it is something like this. So if you're dealing with back pain or rashes or inflammation or gut issues or joint pain, and you've not had your food sensitivity checked for this issues, right here, this is probably the whole benefit of this podcast, is you need to stop, shut the podcast off, and go get a test and find out if you have gluten issues, or just start doing the elimination for 28 days as that video discussed and talked about. There's other questions I know that people bring up, and I hear it often, and they say, well, is this gluten now a plague? Is this an unhealthy thing? We should be avoiding gluten? Because I assume there's got to be some benefit to it. Is a gluten-free diet a healthy thing? Or some people are concerned that I'm missing nutrition because I'm not eating the grains. Do you have any thoughts on either one of those concepts?
I have some thoughts. I think that a lot of our overly processed food is so unhealthy that you're better off just avoiding it, in my opinion. Obviously, if you can eat gluten and it doesn't harm you and you want to, that's okay with me, but I don't think you're missing anything.
So a gluten-free diet really isn't lacking nutrition. You can find it in many other places.
You look at a lot of chronic illnesses nowadays, from heart disease to cancers to, you name it, arthritis. Those chronic inflammatory processes are existing, like diabetes, when there's too many carbohydrates in your diet. And so carbohydrates, a lot of gluten are carbohydrates. The pastas, the breads,
they're delicious.
They're delicious.
Well, they're delicious, and they're inexpensive. And that, unfortunately, is, I think, why we have a society who's buying crappy, cheap food versus investing in their health with food that may not, taste as good, maybe cost a little bit better, but won't throw them into a whole health crisis.
Correct. Yeah. So you'll find all of your nutrients in fruits and vegetables and proteins, chicken, beef, pork, seafood. You'll find all of your nutrients that you would need. So if you did not do the pastas and breads and carbohydrates that you think of, you'll still get the nutrients that you need in all the other foods that are, readily available.
A big thing that's out there today is a carnivore diet. That followed a thing that was called the Atkins diet. That went to the Zone diet. And now it's, transitioned over the last 25 years into the carnivore diet. All of them I'm a fan of, honestly. But I really think the center of these diets is that they have no gluten in them. That they really are just eliminating that reaction. Their gut feels better. The digestive process is better, just like that video talked about. All of a sudden, they start losing weight, getting more energy, and they blame it on I'm eating, a steak every night. Not opposed to it, but let's don't miss where the opportunity is to give credit where credit is due. I think often it's the lack of these crazy carbohydrates, processed foods, not just the increase of your protein. Love protein, over 100 grams a day. As you've heard on multiple podcasts, you need to be doing yourself.
Pain holding you back? AFC Physical Medicine and Chiropractic Centers of Phoenix have real solutions to get your life back. With 9 valley-wide locations, we offer integrated care including chiropractic, medical, and nutritional support. Our approach goes beyond prescriptions, combining therapies to help you thrive. Don't let pain define your story. Take the first step towards living life to its fullest. Call us now at 480-210-6103 or visit afcchiropractic.com to schedule your appointment.
Well, this can get a little dark and, a little bit depressing as people start thinking about, I can't eat, I shouldn't eat, I got to not go out to eat. Let's try to give them a little help. But before we do that, are there any persistent myths about gluten or gluten-free that we can just eliminate today? A lot of times that's where people get stuck.
Sure. One big one that we already talked about was that celiacs can eat gluten in Italy, and that is not true. But another thing is you can find delicious food at restaurants everywhere around the country and the world that are gluten-free. It has gotten so much better than it was 20 years ago. And I think if you just put, I have some tools I use to help me look for food when we're traveling, or even in our local backyard, that you can find what you want to eat. And there's definitely restaurants now that cater to healthy and gluten-free at the same time.
Yeah, everyone always thought it tastes bad. I couldn't go out to get it. And I think, the world has changed, thankfully, for not only celiac people, but just people who want to eat and feel different and feel better. I now almost never eat a gluten-crusted pizza. I don't have really gluten issues, but I just feel better and have more energy when I eat a cauliflower crust pizza. And I think most of those are pretty gluten-free. All right, well, let's maybe finish here as we kind of give you some direction. I know there's a ton of recipes on your website and directions of how people who have gluten sensitivity would just like to live a life that maybe doesn't have gluten involved, or all the way up to celiac disease. What would be some of the best foods that they could eat, and maybe just highlight some of your best recipes I know that people could go find?
Sure. On my blog, you'll find lots of different recipes. And I actually just took all of my paid cooking classes down and made them all free.
Wow.
I'll be rolling out this summer on YouTube and on my blog. And they will no longer have a charge for them, because I just think people really need to go back to the philosophy of cooking at home. Nothing against restaurants or going out to eat, but I think that, like we talked about, getting back to the simplicity of eating. If you're trying to figure out if you're gluten-free or gluten-sensitive, going back to the simplicity of eating, certain foods for the 30-day process or whatever. My blog is not Whole30 only. There's keto on there. There's all kinds of different things, probably some carnivore, because I do love me some steak. But you can find all that there on my blog. Some of our favorites are probably, I have beef ossobuco that you can serve over cauliflower rice, or there's yummy salads, breakfast, some paleo food.
Tacos. Yes, you can do tacos. Corn tortillas, they're yummy.
Pheasant tacos. Yeah. I saw someone posted one of those recently. Those tasted pretty good. Awesome. All right. Well, so there's hope. People can live a healthy, enjoyable life. I don't think you miss a lot of opportunity to go out, have fun, be out in community. And I know that you often probably protect yourself a little bit. Why don't you talk about ways that people really are intolerant or have celiac? They may not realize there's resources out there either to find restaurants or to test their food before they eat it. I've been out to dinner with you. I've seen you do the test. Talk us through this.
Sure. So some of the resources I use when I'm planning a trip or we're going out to eat, there's an app called Atlee. That's a newer one to the market, and you can put in what you're looking for, and it will give you the local things around you that you can find. That, so say I'm looking for pizza, you can put pizza in, it'll find it for you. Find Me Gluten-Free is another one that's been around a long time, and you can find everything on there too. Same thing, search for sushi, and it'll bring up sushi. Those are my two big ones. If I have to, I'll resort to Google Maps, even though it's not quite as good as those other two, for sure. When I've been to Europe, Italy had its own app that I downloaded for the time we were there, and it left you with all the celiac association restaurants that were recommended there, and that was fantastic. Highly recommend that if you're going to Italy. I did have a gluten sensor, an EMA sensor, for a long time. Unfortunately, they're out of business.
Really?
Right now.
That's tragic.
It is kind of sad.
So people don't have the ability to test their food like they used to, or?
There's really not a good one on the market right now.
How did they go out of business? FDA, my guess?
No.
Who knows?
Yeah.
One of the great things, you got to be an open communicator, though. When you're at a restaurant, you might see something that's labeled gluten-free, or you may see something that you'd like to eat, and you can ask your server. So, tell them, how do you set the restaurant up for success? That is key on how to live, without a tester or without the ability carry a lab kit in your purse.
We've done that.
You got to set the restaurant up for success. For anybody who's trying to avoid gluten, what do you typically say?
So I think you really need just to communicate your needs. So if you're gluten sensitive, maybe you can have stuff from a shared fryer so you don't need to worry so much. But as someone with celiac disease, I always ask, are your chips and salsa gluten-free? Because the chips aren't fried in the same fryer. Same for French fries. So you really have to ask, hey, is there a risk of cross contact? Will they change their gloves, a different surface area, shared knife, like all those things. Just make sure you really, communicate well with the restaurant that you're at. And I even phone ahead a lot of the times to give them a heads up that I'm coming, just so they know. And if you're going abroad or to a country that doesn't have the same language you speak, they make these cards that you can download from the internet that say you have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity in all the languages. And I always carry one with me. And I will do my best to learn, I have celiac. I need something gluten-free, please. Is it gluten-free in their language? So I feel like I'm really trying to be a part of the communication process instead of just handing them a piece of paper.
All right. Well, I'm not sure we've answered every question out there, but I hope we answered enough for you to actually find a pathway. We're going to wrap up our podcast, as I often do, with the top 5 reasons, 5 things you can do to live a life with or around gluten. But before we go there, let me just ask a favor, and that is, if you're getting anything out of these podcasts, which I hear a lot of people are, I'm asking you a simple thing. Share this out. You are our marketing plan. People don't find these things unless other people share it and point other people towards it. And there's simple answers here that can change people's lives. So consider helping, sharing. Go to drkevinwall.com or theunpluggedhealthcast.com. But minimally, if you don't do that, you need to go to Goodness Gracious gluten-free.com, and you'll find Michelle there. And you just found something that I think that everyone else had to pay for. Classes coming out that were originally paid for now are free for you to learn how to cook gluten-free, how to eat, how to go out, and anything and all things relative to, I think, cooking. Is that mostly what the classes are about?
Yeah.
So cooking classes. Who doesn't want to learn how to cook good food and not be sick afterwards? All right, so here we go. The top 5 ways that you can live a life either with or without gluten. And my number 1 would be, chances are, if you're dealing with gluten sensitivity, and it's maybe not horrible, you just may have a digestive problem. I've talked so many different times about your gut is so bad because you're not producing the normal enzymes, and or you're not eating foods that have enzymes in them, and or you need probiotics, normal bacteria. And if you have those things in there, you have a better chance of breaking down all things as well as gluten. So look to your gut, probiotics, digestive enzymes, fruits and vegetables that have natural enzymes in them. They will often help you digest even the gluten you decide to not avoid. All right, so that's number 1. What would you say if you have 2, Michelle, that people can walk away with and remember as the only thing maybe they listen to this whole podcast?
I would say my number 2 would be communicate your needs. If you're struggling, don't wait and just think you'll feel better. Go get some testing done. Usually it's inexpensive and it's not scary. You can start with a simple blood draw, and they can even do genetic testing to see if you carry the markers for celiac disease, which is a cheek swab. And then if those things come back, then you can worry about the endoscopy down the road. But even just for sensitivities, I would say go get some food testing done for sure. Don't sit and suffer. It's not worth it.
Then it just progresses into something really bad. All right. Dr. Bock, wrap us up to bring us home.
I love it. I want to just encourage all the audience to, be an advocate for yourself. Like Michelle said, get some testing done, but also be an advocate for yourself by purchasing foods that you can take into your home setting, make yourself. It'll be cost effective for yourself because, let's face it, restaurants have overhead and staff, and, there's a margin there. And so, be an advocate for yourself. Buy some nutritious foods, take it home, figure out how to make the recipes that you enjoy. We've had friends that Monday through Friday, every single Monday was the exact same recipe. Tuesday was the same. Wednesday was the same. Figure out 5 things that you love that you can make at home in a safe way for yourself, so you can figure out these are the foods that make me feel great. And that's how you become more in control or empowerment over health conditions that are developing and giving you problems. So I want to, encourage you to take control of this thing. And then, be an advocate for yourself both at home and in the restaurant setting, because that's fun too.
All right. Well, we say this often. You have the choice to be healthy or wealthy, but often they don't go hand in hand. Whereas you decide that you're going to keep your wealth and your health will go away. The great part about it is if you decide to invest in your health with good foods, proper testing, seeing doctors that care, not just taking a bunch of drugs and buying a bunch of cheap processed food, what you'll find is you save money and you invest in your health, and that has a return that is far-reaching well into your later years. So, all right, well, this is Dr. Wall and
Michelle Bock.
Dr. Bock?
And we are signing off. Be blessed, be healthy, never give up, never give in. We'll see you again on the next episode of the Unplugged Healthcast.